Ava Langston was the last person anyone expected to show up at a county auction, let alone bid on 120 acres of derelict farmland. A single mother of two working double shifts at Mel's Highway Diner, Ava had spent the last 6 years simply trying to survive. But when she walked up the cracked gravel path toward the faded sign reading Willow Bend Orchard EST 1886, something in her heart shifted. The paint was peeling. The barn looked ready to collapse. The farmhouse leaned slightly, like it was tired of standing. But beneath the decay, Ava saw something else potential. Roots. A chance to plant something real after too many years of loss and limbo. Her daughter Marley, 10, tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, are we really going to try to buy a farm?" Ava placed an arm around her daughter's narrow shoulders and didn't answer right away. Her son, Jake, 14 and already a head taller than her, came up beside them holding 3 thermoses of hot chocolate. "We're here, aren't we?" He offered one to each of them, a quiet act of steadiness she appreciated more than he'd ever know. Ava had pulled together every last cent savings from the diner, scraps of Tom's old life insurance, and a small loan from the Maple Glen Credit Union. She was pre-approved up to $110,000. The property was expected to start at $85,000. Not a lot for land this size, not in normal times. But Willow Bend had been left to rot for 3 years. The economy in rural Brighton County had dipped and never quite come back up. To most, the land was a liability. To Ava, it felt like a lifeline. Marley leaned against her. "What happens if we don't get it?" Ava smiled softly. "Then we keep saving and wait for the next shot." But she didn't believe that. Not really, because for the first time in years, she'd allowed herself to want something. Really want it. The next morning at the auction, Ava stood with her bidder's number 17 tucked in her coat pocket. She'd never bought more than a used car before. But she wasn't alone. Mel had shut down the diner for the morning so the staff could come cheer her on. They held coffee cups and wore matching stickers that read, "Go AVA." Mel winked. Even old man Finney tossed in $20. Said he likes your guts. As Ava registered, a black SUV rolled up, glossy and imposing. 2 men stepped out wearing Westlake Development badges. Rumor had it they were snatching up every foreclosed farm within 30 miles to build another revitalized suburban community. Translation: tear it down, pave it, name it something that sounded rustic. Ava's stomach turned. Her $110,000 cap wouldn't stand a chance against corporate money. But she raised her card anyway when bidding opened. 85, 90, 95. She kept pace. 100, 105, 110. Then the Westlake rep raised his card. 115. Ava lowered hers. That was it. All she had. Going once. Going twice. $120,000, said a calm voice from behind. A woman. Gray-haired, sharp eyes, bidder number 8. The crowd stirred. $125,000, Westlake countered. $130,000, the woman replied. It kept going 140, then 150. The woman never blinked. Sold. To bidder 8, the auctioneer bellowed. Ava stood frozen. Her children looked at her, unsure what to say. She'd lost. But when she approached the woman to congratulate her, the woman turned and said, "You're Ava Langston, aren't you? From Mel's Diner? Kids named Jake and Marley." Ava blinked. "How do you?" "Small town. And I make it my business to know who cares about the land I buy." Her name was Eleanor Nash, founder of the Nash Rural Land Trust. Over lunch back at the diner, she slid a folder across the table. "I'd like to offer you a partnership." Ava stared at the proposal. A 99-year lease with an option to buy after 5 years. Full stewardship of the land. Eleanor's trust would provide funds for restoration. Ava would retain ownership of any business she built. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you see possibility, not problems," Eleanor said. "That kind of vision can't be taught." Ava didn't answer right away. Instead, she read every word, every clause. Then, days later, with Marley planting imaginary vegetables in the overgrown garden and Jake reading up on apple varieties, Ava signed. 2 weeks later, they moved into the caretaker's cottage. The house needed everything new: wiring, plumbing, windows. But it was home. Then something incredible happened. While helping the elderly caretaker, clean out the farmhouse, Jake noticed an odd pattern in the floor near the hearth. Knelt beside him and grinned. Old-timers loved secrets. Together, they uncovered a hidden safe. It wasn't filled with gold, but something better: ledgers, old journals, letters from the farm's founder, Elijah Willow, detailing experimental apple varieties he'd cultivated in the now-forgotten North Orchard. Genetic gold. Dr. Natalie Brooks from the State AG Department confirmed it: 5 previously undocumented varieties, resilient and unique. The heritage market would go wild. Suddenly, Willow Bend wasn't just a home. It was a potential business empire rooted in history. But word got out, and Westlake came back, offering $2.5 million. Cold, clean, immediate. Ava considered it. Really considered it. But when she asked her kids, they both said no. "This isn't just a farm," Jake said. "It's ours." She declined the offer. Westlake threatened to build around them, cut off water access, surround Willow Bend in beige fences and cul-de-sacs. So Ava fought. She rallied neighbors, formed a heritage co-op with other small farms, and worked with Eleanor to propose an agricultural preservation district. The county commission was split. Developers promised jobs. Ava and others promised roots. At the final hearing, Ava brought a bottle of their first test batch of Cider Willow Resurrection, made from one of Elijah Willow's apples. She placed it on the table and said, "This isn't just a drink. It's a story. It's survival. It's us." The commission approved the heritage zone. Westlake could still build, but not around her. Not over her. That fall, they opened the tasting room. The cider sold out in a week. Magazine writers showed up. Chefs called. A film crew from New York asked to do a segment. But the best part? Marley got her window seat. Jake got to run the press. And Ava got a second chance. Willow Bend Farm didn't save her. She saved it. But in the process, it gave her something she thought she'd lost forever. A future. By early winter, Willow Bend Farm had become something of a quiet phenomenon. The Willow Resurrection, cider crafted from Elijah Willow's lost apple varieties, was featured in a statewide artisan goods fair. A Michelin-starred restaurant in Chicago called asking for exclusive rights to a future batch. A historical society from Richmond requested permission to digitize Elijah's journals. Ava, once just a tired waitress and grieving widow, now fielded business calls from her kitchen table, while Marley built snow forts outside and Jake sketched labels for their next cider release. But with growth came pressure and decisions. Eleanor visited often, always calm, always one step ahead. One afternoon, she brought news over hot tea. "There's interest from a university consortium," she said, warming her hands on the ceramic mug. "They want to establish a long-term research station here focused on heritage agriculture and rural sustainability." Ava raised an eyebrow. Here, on the farm, they'd lease 3 acres out near the West Field. Set up greenhouses, a lab, offer internships. It sounded like validation, prestige. But Ava hesitated. "This place is still finding its rhythm," she said. "I don't want to turn it into an academic petri dish before we've even had our second harvest." Eleanor nodded slowly. "I understand. Just know it's your call. You're no longer applying to someone else's dream. You're managing your own." But the university wasn't the only one knocking. A prominent cider company from the West Coast requested a collaboration. They wanted to buy the rights to replicate one of Elijah's varieties. The contract was generous. Too generous. Jake, ever the analyst, pored over the proposal and frowned. "They want to rename the variety," he said. "Golden Cascade. Sounds fancy, but it's not us." Ava knew what he meant. It wasn't just the name. It was the story. The apple wasn't discovered in a lab. It survived in silence for a century, waiting for someone to care enough to uncover it. It had history. It had soul. She politely declined the offer. The rejection made headlines in a regional food magazine. The article's title read, "Single Mom Refuses to Sell Out Preserves Legacy Over Profit." The attention brought tourists. bloggers, influencers. In trouble. In January, a break-in occurred at the farmhouse. Nothing was stolen, but the safe, now empty, preserved only as a historical piece, was found tampered with. Someone had tried to pry it open, likely unaware that the real treasure had already been removed months ago. The sheriff blamed curious vandals. Eleanor suspected something else. "Westlake's not done," she said simply. Sure enough, a week later, Ava received a formal notice. Westlake Development was appealing the county's Heritage Zone decision. Their legal team claimed the designation unfairly devalued their adjacent properties. It was a stall tactic, a slow grind of pressure, but it was enough to worry the cooperative. Ava called an emergency meeting at the farmhouse. "We need to be proactive," she told the dozen farmers gathered around the long table. "Not just protect what we've built, but strengthen it." Ideas poured out. Farmer-led tours, a seasonal harvest festival, school partnerships, even an educational podcast hosted by Jake and other teens from the FFA. By spring, the Willow Bend Collective was born, a community-backed network offering agri-tourism, heritage workshops, and farm stays. Ava's orchard became the flagship destination. Marley, now 11, led visiting kids on apple detective scavenger hunts using clues from Elijah's journal. Still, Ava worried. About the appeal. About the pressure. About whether she could continue balancing motherhood, farm management, and being the face of a movement she never asked to lead. One quiet night, she sat with Rhea on the porch, looking out over the orchard. The trees were budding again. Stronger. Fuller. "You think Elijah would approve of what we're doing?" she asked. Rhea smiled without looking over. "I think he'd be proud you kept listening to the land. It's never about just planting trees. It's about what you're growing inside yourself." Ava nodded, tears stinging her eyes. That spring, she made a final decision. She filed paperwork to formally transition from a leaseholder to a full equity partner in the Harmon Trust Stewardship Program. With Eleanor's help, she secured private funding for the buyout clause, ensuring that in 5 years, the land wouldn't just be under her care. It would be hers, truly and legally hers. The woman who once couldn't afford to fix a radiator now had a future staked in acres of soil, legacy apples, and a vision bigger than any bank account. The next morning, Marley drew a sign in bright paint and posted it at the front gate. "Welcome to Willow Bend, where the roots run deep."